Let's talk about masking. So masking is a really useful feature. The way that you access it is by holding the control key down. And you can see right now I've got the mask rect brush here in my UI. I think in the actual UI that you might have installed, it's going to be mask lasso. But it doesn't really matter which one it is because we're going to talk about a few of them. Again, the way you access it is by holding the control key. And you can see when I hold control, this stuff kind of changes because now we've got a different brush on here. The color of my brush changes to yellow, and this lights up a little bit, right? So once I'm holding control, I can access these masking brushes. And the masking brushes are only available here in this menu when you're holding down the control key. So just be mindful that control is how we access most of the stuff. So I'm going to start here by talking about mask rect. So I'm going to hold control, and I'm going to click off of the mesh, and I'm going to drag out a square. And in its simplest version, this is kind of what you get. So if I want to move my little masking space around, I can just hold the space bar. So once I've decided I'm happy with where it is, it doesn't really matter. I can go ahead and drop it. And so now some of the geometry is masked and some of the geometry is not masked. So what does that mean? Well, if I decide I want to sculpt on it, my sculpting is only going to pay attention to the part of the geometry that is unmasked. So masking is a way to work on some geo while leaving other geo alone. That's at least part of the initial functionality. Now, if I want to modify my mask here, there's a few things I can do. If I hold control and I click outside of the geometry, I'm going to invert the mask. If I hold control and I click on the geometry, I'm going to blur the mask. So that doesn't, these two features are not mutually exclusive. If I can blur it and still invert, and I'll maintain my fall off there. So how does that translate into the sculpting? Rather than a sharp line there where it's either on or off, now I'm getting a transition into that masked area. So that's mask rectangle. We can also take a look at this one right here. Let's go to mask, I think it's called mask brush, mask pen. So with mask pen, you can actually paint a mask directly onto the surface of the geometry. So while holding control, once again, to activate the mask brush, you can see there it says that little plus mask there. What you can do is you can change your brush size, I believe, draw size, right? So we can change our draw size. You can change the focal shift, so we're getting a very sharp. Let me actually add another subdivision or two so we can see that nice crisp border. You can soften your focal shift, so you're getting a nice blurry mask. A lot of these same things here apply. Z intensity doesn't have any impact because we're not really modifying the geometry. It's either masked or unmasked. Yeah, the focal shift and the draw size is definitely something that will have an impact. So, and the same stuff applies. Like if I want to invert the mask, I can click off over here. And if I want to soften it, I can hold control and click on the geo. If I want to sharpen it, I can hold control and alt and I can sharpen it. So control and alt and click on the geo will sharpen. Regular control will go ahead and blur it. Let's see. Right, so another thing you can do is you can paint off the mask. So if I hold control, I'm obviously going to be adding mask, right? But if I hold control and alt, you can see that little plus becomes a minus next to mask, and now I can paint out the mask. So control and alt will allow you to paint out the mask if you want, and then you can do all the same stuff. So control and alt and click on will go ahead and sharpen, and control and alt, or just control and click will blur. Control off, click will give you the inverse of whatever you have masked. So then you can come over and paint up stuff and do whatever you want. I guess I'm not really painting, more sculpting, and then I can go ahead and unmask it and you get this very strange little mountain range or whatever that is. Maybe some kind of like alien veins growing off of somebody's head. So anyway, that is mask pen and mask rect. So there's another version of mask rect which is going to look very similar. Let me just back up here. We'll hit OK. So you can also do a circular mask. All the same rules apply. There's a very useful brush here called mask lasso, which will give you the ability to create a shape like this just by lassoing features. So that can be very useful if you have some kind of unusual irregular geometry where a rectangle or a circle is not going to be particularly useful. And there's another version of this called the mask curve, which is going to be right here. So mask curve is a little bit different, and that this curve brush idea applies in other parts of ZBrush as well. So the way that you create it is you hold Control, and then I'm just going to hold tap the mask pen down here, mask curve, and now I'm not holding anything on the keyboard. So were to let go, it's going to go ahead and mask everything on the shaded side. So let's run through that one more time. Hold Control, mask curve is selected, click down, so I'm still holding down on the tablet with my pen, and I can go ahead and move this any way I want as far as the, as long as I don't pick up the pen, I'm going to be able to move this. If I hold the space bar, I can move the whole thing around. So like for instance, if I see currently it'll be the right side of the sphere that is going to be masked and I want the other side, I can just hold the space bar down, scoot my origin point, and then now if I were to release, it would be the left side. Obviously you can just invert it as well. Oh, and if you want to unmask everything, you can just mask some area off of the geometry and it will clear the mask. And a cleared mask inverted becomes a completed, like a completely masked piece of geometry. So the invert doesn't need some part of it to be masked to work. So that's the level 1 mask curve. If I want to add a bend to it, I can just tap the Alt key once. So that will give me the ability to add a curve. If I want it to be a sharp corner, sorry, let me try that again. You double tap the Alt key and you can get a sharp corner. So there you go. That's most of it. Let's see. Anything else here? There's some new stuff here that I need to play with a little bit, but you can get everything that we need to get done in the next couple videos done with mostly just mask lasso, but the mask curve is very useful as well. So, okay, that's the crash course on masking. If there's more stuff that I think about downstream, I'll just throw it into whatever video I happen to talk about, but you should be good to go.